What's going on? How could I help?
So I've been doing a lot of practicing, obviously, and I noticed actually on my reading comp that I've been getting more mistakes than I did in the beginning. I definitely dramatically improved on logical reasoning. I'm getting like double or even triple the correct answers that I did from my diagnostic. But for some reason, I'm doing worse on reading comp. Not even that I'm not even improving, I'm doing worse. So I don't know why that is. And I noticed that I get a lot of mistakes on main point questions when it comes to reading comp. For logical reasoning, I don't, I'm pretty good with main point or like main conclusion and things like that. But I don't know why for reading comp, like I guess I fail to see the big picture because I don't know if it's because I focus on details. Like I get it. I usually select the answer that comes closest to the correct answer. Um, but yeah, I don't know why. I just can't hit the nail on it. And it's been very frustrating trying to get better at reading comp because no matter how much I do um, passages and questions. Like I just can't seem to be improving, and I don't know how to change my technique. I know that we had a class about it last week, which was helpful to hear about other people's experiences with it as well. But for some reason, I'm just not getting it. I want to know what you can say, how you can provide some insights to help me out.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do it. So I'm glad that you attended the class last week. Variety of approaches there. So I'm glad you found it helpful, but what, if anything, did you change about your reading comp as a result of attending that class?
Yeah, so what I've been doing is this technique that you showed, I think it was from you had a PDF of like these students of yours who had kind of summarized their own versions of the 2007 LSAT passages. Like they had paragraph by paragraph, and which is interesting because I saw that as a technique online. It said that if you struggle with reading comp, you should go paragraph by paragraph. Don't move on to the next paragraph until you fully know that you understood that paragraph. Because, you know, sometimes you read a sentence, you don't understand it, you just kind of shrug it off and say, I'll understand the next one. So, but that obviously is not helpful at all. So I've been doing that technique. I would say that actually, since I did pick up on that technique, I got a little better. But I guess what I was saying earlier was that before I picked up that technique, I actually started doing worse. Now that I picked up that technique, it's gotten a little better, but you know, on the exam, I obviously can't be doing that technique because it takes a long time. I mean, I'm taking 20 minutes per passage just because of that one technique, and really trying to take my time with understanding everything. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Like, how do you think? I have been a phrase reader as well, but I don't know, my exam date is 10 weeks away, so I'm not sure if that's going to help me too much. It can help me speed up the reading, but what about the comprehending part, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So these summaries that you're doing, it sounds like implementing that technique is taking a long time. So what do those
Hmm.
summaries look like? How many words, how many sentences?
Yeah, it varies. It depends on how much I understand without writing, having to write it. So I don't write down every single detail, but I guess for some passages it takes me longer because I feel like I don't know more. So I write down what I don't know, which takes up time, and it takes up even time to figure out what I don't know sometimes. So, and I wouldn't say it varies from topic to topic. I would say it's pretty evenly distributed. Sometimes I find myself doing way better on a science passage, and sometimes I find myself doing better on a social science passage. So it depends. It's sometimes about the language, maybe, or like I said, I fail to understand the main point. So I'm getting those questions wrong. I'm getting the inferential ones right, or the ones that refer to a specific line or a specific word and to ask you what the author intends by this. I get those ones right because it tells you kind of where to look. So it reminds me more of logical reasoning. But for some reason, whenever it tells you to evaluate the passage and find the main argument or define the main point of the passage, I'm having trouble like condensing it for myself. And yeah, like I said, I've been selecting the answer that's closest to, but it's not precisely the correct one.
Right. Okay. So I'm getting the sense you gave me a lot there. Amount of time, amount of words that you're writing down for a summary.
Mm-hmm.
Are we talking 10 words, 50 words, 100 words? The examples that I gave in the class were student written review. They weren't meant to be what you do on test day itself within timed conditions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's 50 words, and it depends, like I said. So I write 5 words for one paragraph. It depends, like I said. And the next paragraph would give me a little more information. So my summary of it would be like 15 words. I don't know which part of it takes time. Also, after I finish a paragraph, I don't just write it down. I finish the whole passage, and then I do like a very brief skimming per paragraph. Um, while I'm reading the passage, I try to engage by stopping after every paragraph and summarizing it vocally to myself, and then moving on and moving on. And so once I finish, I try to, off memory, write down what I did vocalize paragraph by paragraph. And if I'm having trouble like with remembering something, that's when I do the skimming. So it's a lot of going back and forth, and I think that's what takes time, but I've been trying to take my time with it. It is the last section that I've been practicing. I did logic games first, reasoning second. Now I'm on reading comp, and I'm getting kind of stuck on it. It's also taking away my time from like practicing other things. I've been doing like about 7 to 10 passages a day. Yeah, like I said, I'm like 10 weeks away from the exam. I was so like worried yesterday because I also had a medical emergency. So I had to take like 2 days off from studying. So I was thinking like, should I just postpone to November now? Like I was having almost like a panic attack. I don't know how to deal with it. What advice could you give me?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm sorry to hear about the medical issue. I hope you're doing better now. I know it took you out of commission for a couple days, but if you're still okay to go for October health-wise, at least you have that. If you did have to push back to November, not a big deal. If things are not good or they get worse, you could push back to November, totally fine. Taking November LSAT still gives you plenty of time to apply this cycle. It doesn't put you late in the cycle. And
Yeah,
another 4 or 5 weeks, not a huge deal.
yeah. What do you think about January? I mean, I'm only asking about January. My goal is to take this test once and once only based on the materials that you've provided. I believe I can make that happen. But for the odd chance that I am unhappy with my first score, well, if I were to take it in October, I wouldn't be able to sign up for November. And I don't want to sign up for both at once because I don't think that that's logical. But my other only option would be to take it in January. So what do you think about a January test?
It's a little bit late.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that there's a little bit less scholarship money available. It's a little bit tougher. But if you got a few points more by taking it in January, that would make it totally worth it. Now, you talked about registering for both October and November, not knowing if you'll need November, right? And you pointed out that it might not be logical because it could be a waste. And yeah, it could be a waste in terms of money, in terms of fees, but that might be what you need to do in order to be able to apply relatively earlier. If you could apply 2 months earlier by registering for November, even if you didn't need it, it'd be worth the $200 even if it was lost.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, well, like I said, I want to take the exam once and I plan to, but hopefully all goes well. But yeah, I guess right now I'm just kind of stuck with deciding between October and November. I prefer to do October, but I don't know if it's gonna completely depend on my preference. I have to see when I'm completely ready. Regardless, for October, I believe the deadline to sign up would be like beginning of September anyway, so I would have to decide quick. And yeah, I don't know. Do you think 10 weeks is a sufficient amount of time to improve more in reading comp?
Yeah, it is. 10 weeks more is plenty, especially you've already been at it for a while. You've seen a little bit of what works and what doesn't. And I want to talk more about the reading comp summaries, but just to go back to, again, the test dates, just register for both. If you're able to afford it, just have that secured, have it taken care of. If you don't need one of them, yeah, LSAT could get some more money in fees, which is nice for them, not so nice for you. But in the grand scheme of things, it's a drop in the bucket. And it ensures that you're not taking in January just because you didn't want to pay for November. I'd also re-examine the idea of taking it once and being done with it. Yeah, perfect world, that'd be nice. But what would be the actual consequences of taking it twice?
None, I would say.
It's not a huge deal if you have to take it twice. And yeah, it could feel cleaner to do it once and be done, but retaking is incredibly common. At the end of the day, we're not about what necessarily is the cleanest, smoothest process. We're about getting you to the best possible result in the end, both for LSAT and then, of course, for your admissions journey in general. And given that law schools don't average multiple LSAT scores, retaking, there's a lot to be said for it. I think most people should retake just because through luck alone, you could do a few points better and apply with a higher score. So why wouldn't you, especially since the exam dates are only 4 or 5 weeks apart?
Yeah. The thing is, though, with October, if I were to take it, I believe it said it was a non-disclosed form. So I wouldn't really, if I plan to take it both in October and November, then I wouldn't know what I need improvement on. I mean, I can get a general idea, but that'd be really general. It wouldn't like specify anything for me to focus on for the next, what, it would probably be 4 or 5 weeks away. So I don't know, like that's kind of another thing that I've been thinking about. Is taking an exam back-to-back months a good idea even?
Taking 2 exams back-to-back is fine. I mean, I don't see the downside. If you're doing 3 or 4 back-to-back, admissions is going to be like, is this person really carefully considering when they're ready for the LSAT versus taking and taking and taking just to get a higher score, which obviously you want to do. Everybody knows that, but they also want to know that you're carefully considering each take. But 2 back-to-back and on consecutive months is totally fine. I also want to circle back to the idea of undisclosed exams. This year with the flex, everything's been undisclosed so far. That may continue. They may disclose at some point in the future. I think they're going to want to. But if October is flex, which I would say probably, November might be flex. I'd say, again, that's a probably. So I wouldn't count on disclosed exams anytime soon.
Okay.
But then there's also the question of, do you need the exam to be disclosed in order to know what to work on? You opened this conversation about reading comp. You haven't taken the exam before, yet you know reading comp is an area you want to focus. Nobody had to tell you that. You knew just from your own experience.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't know. Another thing, I don't even know how to sit down and focus on reading comp without getting so frustrated. I think my frustration with it is something that turns me away from it. And I think that you have mentioned this, but I mean, I've definitely heard this like generally everywhere I go. You should probably focus on the things that, you know, are your weaknesses, but then other places say focus on your strengths. I think with the LSAT, it's more about the weaknesses because your strengths will only take you so far. Your weaknesses will take you even farther, I feel like, if you master them. So I don't know. It's just so complicated. But I mean, like, you're familiar with this journey because you've been on it for a long time and you struggled with it too to begin with. So that's kind of an inspiring story to hear. But then it's also like, yeah, it took you 1 year to master it. So I hope that, but also you said that that happened to you because you didn't have like the resources or the tools, proper tools to improve like fast. You kind of just took practice test. So yeah, and I guess another conversation. So for practice tests, is it okay to not take 10? I know that you said take 10 exams. Well, it would be ideal to take 10 timed exams. And is it okay to not take 10? And if we were to take them, do you think it's better to do the 5 section timed ones? Because that's what I've been doing. But I do get burnt out for the next like 2 days. So what do you think about that?
Well, October, as you said, 10 weeks away. So doing 10 full-length exams is perfectly reasonable. You could fit that in. You could do 1 exam a week between now and test day. And because you've already been at it for a while, you already have the foundation. I think that's a reasonable idea. You could also even do 2 exams per week if you have the time in your schedule, along with detailed review of those exams. That'd be fine also, especially since it's a flex. Well, let me say it's almost certainly going to be a flex for October. I believe it's okay to do majority 3-section exams.
Okay,
And
that's good.
LSAC has typically been announcing about 6 weeks prior. So if that continues, you'll know in about a month, 4 weeks from now or so, whether it is flex or not, assuming previous holds. Then you can adjust accordingly. But for now, when you're 10 weeks out, I think doing 3-section exams is fine. Then as it gets closer, you might want to do 5-section exams on the off chance it was regular, not flex. But I would bet a lot of money October is going to be a flex.
What about November? I'm just curious. You said it's likely to be a flex.
I'd say it's also pretty likely. I would, if I had to put numbers, I'd say October at the moment, speaking now, end of July, October, 99% flex, November, 90% flex. Just based on the direction I see things going in general, based on what I'm seeing in the news and such, I think COVID's going to be around for long enough that it warrants making the LSAT online, since they clearly have the ability to do it. Why would they do it in person with all the potential risks and logistical issues involved to administer with social distancing, masks, half empty classrooms, half empty test centers? I don't see it happening.
Yeah.
Now, to go back to, I think there was an important point you raised here around getting discouraged by reading comp, not liking reading comp, focusing on strengths versus weaknesses. They each have their place. Weaknesses, there's more potential to improve significantly, and so go for your lowest hanging fruit. On the flip side, though, you don't want to hit yourself over the head so much with weaknesses that you dread the idea of studying in general because you're not doing well and you don't like what you're doing. So you could mix in a little bit of other work too, just as a booster and just to stay fresh. So maybe let's say, what's a section you like, or what's a question you like?
Like, I like logic games a lot.
I hear that.
The whole section.
So do some games, mix in some games here and there. Also, if you're doing at least one full length exam, meaning 3 sections here, you're doing games there. So you're doing games. You're also getting the benefit or the pleasure of measuring yourself, which alone is fun. People like measuring themselves. We like the feedback, and that's to be moderated, not to go overboard on it like I did. As you said, I was just taking exam after exam, wasting a lot of time. But doing a little bit of that makes sense, since the exam, you want to work on pacing, you want to work on endurance. So exams are a way to do that and mix it in. And of course, you could also drill tough curveball games as well, just to keep things interesting for yourself. There's a lot of games out there, but reading comp is where I would significantly focus a lot of your time aside from full-length exams. We also talked about main point, main idea, getting that. So I think a lot about what you need your summaries to look like. Do they need to be really content heavy, or could they simply be more general? Like, there's evidence here, there's viewpoints here, there's the author's opinion here. So you could approach summaries on a more meta level rather than trying to get down a lot of the details and a lot of the substance.
Yeah, I feel like that's what I've been doing, and it's actually not helpful at all. Okay, that makes sense. And then I kind of want to go back to one thing that you said about carefully reviewing the practice exams you take. When you say that, I'm assuming you mean figuring out why you got the wrong answer, figuring out why the wrong answer is the wrong answer when you get the wrong answer. But what about the right answers that you get? Would you recommend looking over those as well, or does you getting it right kind of guarantee that you would get a question like that right?
It's a great question. So there's a whole variety, there's a whole spectrum here. You have getting things right and being confident in it and approaching it efficiently. There's getting it right, but getting it right too slowly or inefficiently. If it's inefficient, it's worth reviewing. If it's a lucky guess between 2 or more, it's worth reviewing. If your confidence level's pretty low, it's worth reviewing. So not necessarily only the wrong answers. Those other ones I mentioned are also good candidates to review. And this means reviewing can take a really long time, but it's worth it.
Yeah, seems like it. By reviewing is how I kind of improved on logical reasoning, actually. So that is how I understood it to be very worth it, and probably one of the most significant points in your whole process of learning the LSAT and kind of trying to master it and understanding how the test makers even come up with these questions. So yeah, and tonight we have a class, so I'm looking forward to that. We have 2 classes tonight, correct? I think.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, cool. So yeah, cool. Okay, so I'll see you at 5 o'clock.
Awesome. I'll see you then, Carney. Have a good one.
You as well. Bye.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.